Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni, and this podcast, Healing Conversations. Sorry, I was going to say, should I introduce myself more? But we're going to go with no today. This is it. So, the podcast is all about natural healing. We're here to promote natural healing of anything that is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so, without further ado, let's get started. And our guest in the studio today is Amanda Hinman. Amanda, welcome. Very lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Einav. I'm excited, happy to have this conversation and share a very important message of natural healing is possible to more people.
Exactly, exactly. So let's start with you and tell us something about you. Let's get on the same page.
So, yes, I am a women's hormone health expert and the author of the best-selling book, The Thyroid Hormone Solution. And really, I feel like that's kind of the formal looks good on paper type of introduction. But I came this way through my own healing journey and helping my family to heal when we had some pretty scary, tragic health crises happening, and really had to kind of dig deep and find a way to heal naturally.
hmm So I would love to hear more a little bit about your healing journey, and I understand it started something with your daughter. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So, just like you mentioned, this was several years ago. Gosh, I'm trying to think. It was over 12 years ago now. I was pregnant with my fourth daughter. I have four girls. And during that pregnancy, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And for your listeners who may have heard of that, autoimmune is where essentially where your body's immune system is like attacking itself. And I was told that I would be dependent on medication for the rest of my life. And once you have one autoimmune, you're much more likely to have additional autoimmune diagnosis in the years to come. And I remember sitting in the doctor's office and being like completely in denial and actually a little bit angry by that diagnosis because at that time I thought I was very healthy. I thought I was checking all the boxes and doing the things that attribute to great health. I was eating salads and smoothies. I was a group fitness instructor and teaching cardio kickbox classes 3 times a week. So from the outside, I looked thin and healthy, I guess you would say. But on the inside, obviously, my body had a different story. And mind you, I was kind of pushing down and ignoring all of my symptoms like insomnia, wired racing thoughts at night. My brain was like always just in this constant loop. I had hair loss, I had acne, I had bloating. So I was kind of like pushing those aside and just ignoring them instead of listening and becoming curious. And then I had this diagnosis. And then you fast forward a few months after that, I started to work with a naturopathic doctor and a functional medicine doctor. I ran a whole bunch of fancy, tests and was given a list of 12 different supplements to start taking and foods to eliminate from my diet. And at first I thought like, okay, this is going to help me heal. I can do these steps. And I jumped right into action to start to make those happen. And had a little bit of improvement. Maybe I was, not quite as bloated for a little bit, but still insomnia, still a lot of anxiety, really was not emotionally in a good place. And I started to get resentful because I felt like I could never eat what everyone around me was eating. And it was really hard. It felt like so much work and I was swallowing all these pills and my antibody numbers continued to rise. They weren't improving. Then at that time, this was several months after my initial diagnosis, my oldest daughter, she had always been highly sensitive and anxious, and her anxiety progressed to the point where she was having between 10 to even up to 15 seizures in a day. And when I tell you there's nothing that brings you to your knees more than as a parent to see your child struggling.
Mm.
And I was scared. Like there were many days where I thought she wasn't going to survive. We had been to some of the best pediatric neurologists and they ran all the tests. And we were told, kind of like I was told, that sometimes these things are genetic and her seizures, sometimes it's genetic. Here's some more medication to try and manage it. but there was no long-term like healing plan. It was kind of just assumed that she's going to have to be on medication for the rest of her life. She would likely never be able to drive a car because she was on 4 different benzodiazepines, taking 12 pills a day just to not have a seizure for 24 hours. And my like sharp and witty little girl just became dull and like almost like a faded out version of who she was. And so every fiber in my being thought, like, this cannot be her future for the rest of her life. Like, there has to be something more missing in terms of understanding what caused this. So that's when I went back to school to study functional medicine and spent the next several years. Functional medicine is looking at the individual, unique factors of how all the different systems in the body, your nervous system, your hormone endocrine system, your digestive system, your immune system, how all of these systems work together and can either build health and build cellular capacity and vitality or become blocked, depleted, and destroyed and start to present symptoms. Like her seizures were just the symptoms of nervous system dysregulation. My autoimmune, my thyroid was just symptoms of immune system dysregulation that wasn't being supported. So once I had a new understanding of like, oh, wow, I had no idea all these different things were affecting our health in different ways, that's what allowed us both to kind of step by step rebuild health. And that's exactly what I help women to do now is to rebuild their health in a new way. So in 9 months' time, she weaned off of all medication, has been seizure free ever since. Now she's a junior in college and thriving. I was able to wean off of all of my medication and really just feel more in tune and so much more empowered because I know what my body needs and I can work with it to support it to have that strength and that vitality.
Wow. Wow. And of course, I totally resonate with what you're saying. Yeah, seeing your child suffering is definitely very scary. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm curious though, how did you decide to go into functional medicine? Why is that and not something else? Because there are really so many different things that you could have picked instead.
I think I think it was a like divine redirection. That's honestly the best I can say is like, I've always been somebody who loves to learn. Like I said, I was interested in health and fitness and nutrition to begin with. I had studied more than 100 different dietary theories. So I knew that food was a component that's really influential for our health. But I also knew there had to be more to that because I was eating healthy. So that wasn't the only piece. And functional medicine was something that kind of brought it all together to understand hormones, to understand digestion, to understand, our nervous system and things like that. So I think it resonated with me. It was an option that I was like, I really want to get more pieces of the puzzle to put it all together.
Mm, amazing. And so, you know, what you're saying, right, is that yes, you can heal yourself naturally, but also you're saying that it is possible to wean yourself off all of these medications and get yourself into a place of, well, I want to say complete health. Is that a fair statement, or is it really more about knowing to how to regulate your system, not with pills and tablets and stuff like that, but actually with understanding your rhythm, the rhythm of the body.
I think that's what it is. It's understanding, right, and being able to regulate in a way because you have a deeper connection with and you're tuned into like what I was doing previously was ignoring the signals.
Mm,
Your symptoms are your body's signals. And I had been ignoring those signals and kind of just like shoving them down instead of just getting quiet and being still and paying attention to notice those signals. So, yes, I think that's what it is. It's really learning more about yourself and also what are the tools, what are the actions that are going to help to, like I said, rebuild health. I help my clients with this all the time. We know that nutrition is absolutely important. And that's one of the key steps in my book. I talk about the 5 steps, right? That's one of the steps is replenishing nutrients and knowing what nutrients your cells need more of.
mhm,
But another step is your digestion, your gut health, right? So even if you're eating the foods like I was eating healthy foods, salads and smoothies, but I was so imbalanced in my gut and my nervous system that those nutrients weren't actually making it into the cell. So it's a difference between putting it in your mouth and actually getting it inside your cell. There's extra steps that need to happen. Part of it is what's happening in your gut health. So
Mm.
we look at restoring that digestive health in your gut. Um, Another piece is looking at the nervous system, resetting your thinking and using brain science to recognize where, and this was another huge area for both my daughter and myself, and many clients that I work with, is oftentimes what we're thinking about or believing or expecting or even giving our attention to is something that causes frustration, something that causes anger or impatience or guilt or shame. And until we are willing to question, like, well, is there another way that I could perceive this situation or this event or this circumstance? And we start to open up and start to see, like, maybe I can be curious instead of judgmental. Maybe I can be hopeful instead of frustrated.
Mhm.
Once you can start to switch your thoughts, which then lead to a different emotional experience, now your nervous system no longer feels threatened in that fight or flight all the time. It can switch into parasympathetic rest and digest and heal side of functioning. So that's a huge piece of it too.
And it is interesting though for me that you said thinking, and that is kind of it went into kind of mindset, and I guess
Mhm.
that's such a intertwined way of right. It's thinking, it's emotions. Is it mind? Is it it's a little bit confusing, but I yes, I know exactly what's going on because I use the same. The language is a little bit confusing, but the end result is the same, right? It's like you say, finding a
Yeah.
curiosity and not taking everything at face value. Be more, inquisitive and find out what is going on. But
Mhm.
I'm curious. First of all, I guess I'm curious. Maybe I think it's a I have a misunderstanding here somewhere because when you work with your clients, and in a minute, of course, we will talk about all these different various, you know, illnesses and ailments that people come to you with. But I imagine that because the body is so alive and so dynamic, I imagine that it's not a one diagnosis or one kind of treatment. It doesn't, right? It has to be something that is ongoing, something that is you check in to see, of course, like you said, the symptoms and mindsets and how you're feeling and all of that. But how do you know if what you advise someone to do today is the same as what is going to be a month from now? That's kind of where my misunderstanding is somewhere there on that line.
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're saying, if I'm understanding you enough, it's that health is an ongoing journey and a relationship. It's not static. Absolutely. So for most women who come to work with me, they're in a situation where they are clear that they want their health to change in a pretty strong way. Like I want, whether it's I want to release this extra 20 pounds that I put on, I want to make sure that I can make it through the night and not have this insomnia and just racing anxiety and mental activity. Or I really want to have less aches and pains in my body. Like I just have a lot of like inflammation and aches and pains and things like that. So whatever is their top goal, it's usually something, right? What is it? What is the thing that's like causing them discontentment with their health? And there's a series, like I said, these 5 steps we work through over a course of 5 months because nothing that lasts and sticks with you for decades is a quick fix, right? It's about really looking at the layers, understanding the root cause for your specific body, where your body is now at this season in your life, because where you are in your 30s is going to look different than when you're in your 40s, right? Your hormones change, your body changes. Um, and then go through this healing journey over the course of 5 months, taking one step at a time. And that will give you more understanding and more knowledge about your body that you'll always have with you. But many of my clients will stay with me. We do a much more I call it a peak performance membership, where we just meet and touch base once a quarter. And that gives us a chance to do a symptom reflection. We look at what are your symptoms that are presenting, what are they showing. We rerun like, one key lab work panel once a year to make sure that we're staying on tune with the physiological aspects that are happening in your body. We also get very clear of like, okay, each ongoing journey, is it cognitive health that you want to make sure you're looking at now? Is it bone health? Is it cardiovascular? So there is a way to have this ongoing proactive approach to your health. But usually that first 5 months is where somebody's like, I'm in a critical situation. Like I want things to shift and to change. It's not more of like maintenance and optimization. It's I want a big shift. So we dive a little bit deeper and work step by step through these things to learn how to support your body now. And then you kind of go in more of a how do I maintain and refine
Right.
mode. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that that answers the question. Yeah. So it's you find you meet the person or their body where they're at, and then
Yes.
you go through all of these different steps. Then you check it again, and then see basically what next. And I like
Mhm.
what you're saying, that yes, it is a journey, because it's always a journey, right? It's never really just a snap of a finger. Um,
Yes.
so I mean, you already mentioned some, ailments and complaints that a lot of people have these days, like insomnia and fatigue, brain fog, thyroid, all of these, losing weight, of course, especially as we get older, and this challenge of losing weight. So where do we start? And also, is that something that is really, with the right kind of tools, is that reversible, or is that something that people are looking at, forever maintaining, for always?
Think anything is always you're always able to build health, right? There's never you never reach a point in your life where it's like, oh, you can stop improving or building your health, right? There's always an upside from where you are. And I think the biggest one, what I call this why bother syndrome, one of the biggest things, especially that is I find affects, over 2 million women, is why bother syndrome. Why bother? We've as a cultural society, and it's only natural because it's what we see evidence of, as the body ages, many times we see evidence of more complaints and more aches and more pains and more, you know, insomnia and discomfort in our health. So um, why bother syndrome looks like, if you've maybe over the last 2 weeks, if you've experienced 3 or more nights where you haven't been able to fall asleep, you're tossing and turning, you wake up feeling unrested, and you're just not at your best. Like you kind of like, oh, I'm struggling through the day because I didn't get good sleep. And yet you haven't figured out how to improve that, right? That could be one sign of it. Or if you thought to yourself, at least twice in the last week, oh, I'm just going to grab this, or like you had a meal that you grabbed for convenience, or just simply because it was what was in front of you, what worked, and later you went to have some guilt or some shame on it. Like you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have eaten that. I know that wasn't, the best choice. And so you literally like regretted your decision. That's another sign. Why bother? You haven't yet been able to get into a place of where you've got a good system where you're continuously feeling content and happy about your choices for nourishment, right? Another symptom that why bother can look like is maybe you thought, oh, I want to get some deeper layer lab work. I want to look at my hormones, or maybe it would be helpful to look at my nutrients and just kind of get some more information so I know how to customize my health and nourishment approach. But yet life has always gotten busy and something else has come up, or you haven't had the time, you haven't made the time, right? These are things that many of us have thought, yet we haven't prioritized yet the decision to take action in a new way. And it
Mhm.
can definitely be overwhelming because we live in an age where there's so much information out. You just type something in a chat GPT now and you'll get tons of information. A lot of it's conflicting about how to take care of your health. Should I do intermittent fasting or keto diet? Or is it better to do high intensity cardio? Or should I do more walking and weight training? Like there's so much conflicting information that I feel like a lot of women fall into the, you know what, it's just too much, it's overwhelming, why bother? I
Mm.
can't figure it out. I tried this and it didn't work, or I tried that and now it says to do something different. So you step back instead of leaning in and getting some support to know where to clarify, what to take off the table, and what's applicable for your body. That requires you to become like a scientist and get really quiet and pay attention to your body.
But this is for me, this is very interesting because I, of course, see it with my clients a lot, and I guess some of that is also my own, internal voice here. Because I see people, and I know that happened to me a long time ago, as well. That basically was that, and it's not necessarily about diet and nutrition and pains and aches and stuff like that, but it was more, I guess, mental, emotional side of thinking. I am not where I want to be. Like life is so challenging. I definitely don't want to be in where I am today, but I have no idea how to change that because, of course, if I knew, I would have already done that. But also knowing that where we are, is so not in alignment with where we want to be, that we're kind of saying, well, if I do it by myself, I might make things worse. So I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And then thinking, if I want to go on any of this kind of change program, it's like we have that fear of how long is it going to take and can I actually do it? And, will I fail? And all of these kind of little niggles and stuff, things that kind of really hold us back. And so when you mention the decision, I think people that listen to this podcast a lot will know that nearly every conversation, the question of decision comes up because how do we help people make the decision that they say, do you know what? Whatever it takes, it's better than where I am at the moment. And of
Yes.
course, I want to find someone that will help me and guide me to get to that place, so I'm not here by myself. So
Mhm.
I'm hearing you. I hear it as well, of course, from other people. But I am curious, how do we help people to get into that decision? And also, how do we make it easier for them now, more specifically, when they come to you in this kind of a program, to know that it's not like we said before, it's not a snap of a finger. It's not something that is just going to happen, but this journey is enriching and is rewarding, and it's not as scary as when as it is when it's in your own head and kind of stays locked there. Yeah. So all of that
Yes. So your first question was how do we make the decision? Is that the
is
question?
one of the main question that always comes up.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's so critical. And I love that you bring this up because it really is. How do I make the decision? And I would take it a step further. How do I stick with the decision
Mhm.
once I've made the choice? Because usually we can get to the place of where it's uncomfortable enough to be like I had made the decision when I had the diagnosis of Hashimoto's, oh, I don't want this disease for the rest of my life. I made the decision to go and get help. Just like you said, don't try and do it alone. I absolutely 100% encourage any of your listeners who are thinking that they want to make a change, get some support. Don't try and do it by yourself. That's really, really hard. And it's really, really uncomfortable to stick with it. But get some support. So I had invested in a functional medicine naturopathic doctor, right? The thing that shifted for me though is it became uncomfortable emotionally for me to implement some of the changes because I hadn't done the brain science to change how I identified who I thought I was. It was more of like me trying to force myself to do something. It's kind of like I always say this identity drives behavior. I, for the rest of my life, every single day on this earth, will always view myself as a mom. As a mom, that will drive certain behavioral choices that I make. It's not like one day I'll wake up and be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not a mom anymore. I don't have to think about my kids, right? That will never
Never
happen
gonna
because
be one.
I identify as a mom. So that will always dictate and be a guiding influence on my choices and my actions. Well, until something becomes part of your identity, you can try and will yourself to take action or to make a decision in a certain direction. But if it's not how you view yourself,
Mm.
it won't stick for the long term. So
Yeah.
I had identified as somebody who was healthy, but I didn't know previously that health required the mental, emotional prioritization as well. I thought it was just the food and the movement. I wasn't linking those things up. So I didn't prioritize those behaviors and those actions previously until I learned, like, oh, actually, the whole picture of health is many different facets. And until I identify, I had to reframe. If I can see myself as a healthy individual, part of a healthy individual includes what are my mind body practices that I'm doing every day? Include, in addition to what are the foods I'm putting in my body every day?
Mm.
How am I moving my body every day? Right. So until we identify as whatever it is that's going to, maybe for some people, it's, I identify as somebody who prioritizes an evening routine so that I can wind down and have peaceful sleep all night, right? But if it's like, I'm just making myself try and do this, try and get into bed by 10 p.m. every night, but you don't see yourself as somebody, hey, who prioritizes that, that's just who you are,
I
it
think
won't stick.
the thing that you were saying, I'm sorry, I did actually cut you there. Sorry.
Mhm. Well, that's okay.
I apologize. But I was just going to say, I think you did hit the nail on the head there because, you know, people, cleverer people than me said, you will never outperform your self-image. And what you're saying is, I love it. I love that you're saying that really, it's not, the decision to be healthy can't be just, let me just change one aspect of it. But it's exactly that. Until you see yourself as, the person that takes into account all of these aspects, the person that actually can see a way, you know, can't see any other way other than the thing that they decide to do, that's when the success is, because that's when you really, yeah, like you say, you're buying into this new identity and you're now going out there to achieving it. And I think it's wonderful, and I really hope that anyone listening to that will have that conversation with themselves, asking, really, am I all in, or am I actually sitting on the fence here, kind of just moving some things around, but not really fully buying into all of this. And I love that you mentioned it because it's a really important question for people to ask themselves.
Doesn't happen overnight. Like that
No.
too is a process to reinforce and reinforce, right? And like everything in life, it's a process. That's, I take us back to when we were toddlers. We didn't know any different. We just assumed that we are going to learn to walk one day because everyone around us was learning to walk. So it was like that was the normal expectation. So lucky for us, we had the persistence to stick to it. But trust me, the first 150 times you tried to stand up and take steps, you were not just cruising across the kitchen. You were wobbling and falling over and then falling again. And it didn't phase us at that time because it was expected. It was just almost like programmed into our brain of like, this is just what humans do. They get up on 2 feet and they walk. Well, if we had the program into our subconscious of this is what health is and this is just how you live your life, it would be easy too, right? So it's about using the brain science. That's why I think that's a critical part of the healing journey. If it was automatic, you'd already have it. Your
Yeah,
symptoms are to
exactly.
show you it's not automatic for you yet. So we get to do some rewiring in the brain to help expand your definitions and your identity.
I want to ask actually something that also coming back to something that you said earlier, of course, about when you got your diagnosis and deciding that actually you're not having that, allowing that into your system kind of thing, and deciding that there was a natural way of healing. And this is another question that on this podcast, of course, we are asking a lot, which is, we know that we all have this white coat syndrome, right? Whatever the doctors say, we like, yeah, okay, that's the reality, that's the truth. And yet that was not your reality, right? How did you know to decide, or what was, your attitude and environment, I guess, that led you to say, I'm not staying with that. I'm actually going out there to look for other solutions.
Exactly that. And I will say, I mean, I think in some ways in my life, this has served me, in other ways, probably not as much. But especially earlier, younger in my years, I definitely had more of a I don't know, like a little bit of a rebel type of personality of like, if somebody told me you can't do this, it almost made me want to do it more. Does that make sense? Like, and I don't know if that's helpful. I'm not saying it may not resonate with everyone, but it was almost like when I was told, like, oh yeah, you'll just be on medication for life, and this is, and like my daughter, this is just what it is. The fact that it just seems so matter of fact almost made me be like, no, 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 no. Like, I want to almost rewrite that story and overcome that expectation. And I think part of it was just this intrinsic, I don't know, way that I was born with a little bit of a rebellious flair, if you will. And I think also because it was something that I cared so much about. Like, it was so essential and foundational for the rest of our lives. If it was something, if someone said, hey, you know what, I think, I don't know, maybe you could, you know, dunk a basketball. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't really care to do it that much. You
Mm.
know what I mean? This was something that I deeply cared about. So I was
Yeah.
willing to go on that
Yeah.
journey.
I imagine that a lot, that you will probably also in your journey, especially because it's a longer journey of, like you said, 7 months, and people, you would probably come across people's beliefs around is it something that you can achieve naturally versus something that you need to take pills for? And I imagine that this conversation comes along quite often for you.
With the work I do all the time. And that's part of the process that we go through. I mean, in addition to the steps, like I said, looking at the foods that you're eating, looking at your gut health, looking at hormones, all of those physiological pieces are a part of the puzzle. Absolutely. But if you do that and we didn't look at your belief system, we didn't look at your emotional kind of set point, what I call it, what's your range? What's the most common emotions that you experience in a week? If we don't question those and look at those and also explore what are your beliefs? What do you think is possible? What do you even think it's possible? One of the most common, um, what I call like dysfunctional relationships that my clients have and that I used to have, like my clients are like former versions of me, right? Is my relationship with time. I used to always have this belief that I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I was chronically overwhelmed because of the story that I had about my relationship with time, right? That's a choice.
Mm,
We all have 24 hours in a day. There's not like some people have 30 and some people have 6. No, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. How we relate to and interact with those 24 hours is our choice.
mm,
So again, it's really a lot of what I do is teaching new perspectives and new ways of thinking, new concepts about questioning the things that are causing you the most challenge in your life
mm,
and looking at it from a different lens, a different angle. First, being willing to consider a different angle, then really contemplating and thinking about it and saying, well, which one works better for me? Like, which one, if I could pick and choose, which one would I want to have? And now, if the one you want to have is not the one you've been having, well, now we got to practice a new way of looking at things and seeing evidence of that new way until that becomes just the norm.
mm. Right. And so, Amanda, let's talk a little bit about the 5 steps and
Yes.
what, I mean, we already mentioned some things that people, some, usual complaints that people have, but really is that, the 5 steps, are they suitable for anyone and everything, or for some more than others, or some ailments more than others? Take us through it, please.
Great question. I mean, like I said, my expertise, and I definitely work with women over age 40 and primarily around thyroid hormone support. So, I mean, that touches everything. Like I said, everything is interconnected. There's no isolation of just hormones don't affect cardiovascular health or bone health. They all affect everything. But these 5 steps are designed to be, and I'll walk through what they are, but they're designed to allow unique customization because every person's life, every person's body, every person's environment is going to be different. So I cannot give you a cookie cutter plan that says, take this and it'll work universally across the board. But what we do is we take this framework, the 5 step framework, and overlap your life, your body, your environment, your physiology over this framework to use as a guide for you to make progress. So the first step is step number one, identify the root cause for your life and your body, right? So that's a matter of looking at, and I would be happy to share with your listeners, get curious, what are your symptoms pointing to? I have a free hormone health assessment that looks at your symptoms. It kind of maps if you're having insomnia, if you're having rashes, if you're having headaches, if you're having water retention, if you're having bloating, what are those symptoms? And how do those symptoms correlate to the top 6 metabolic hormones? So we look at cortisol, thyroid, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. What do those symptoms show us that may be elevated or maybe suppressed, that you can start to get, oh, okay, it looks like I have really low cortisol, or maybe some elevated insulin problems here based on the symptoms I'm experiencing. Ooh, maybe I should look at those deeper, right? So step number one is get curious. Start to kind of look at some of the puzzle pieces and the data points with your symptoms, looking at some lab work data, like we use micronutrient tests and hormone testing to see like what your body is showing us. And then match that with, okay, what are your eating routines like? What are your movement routines like? What are the biggest stressors in your life? The things that cause tension. So once we can kind of put all the pieces out on the table, we can see what we have to work with, right? So that's step number one. Step number two is replenishing nutrients. Like I said, every single cell in your body is dependent on nutrients in order for it to function, to do its job. There's over 1 billion cells. Well, they all need nutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, oxygen in order for them to function. So we kind of take those puzzle pieces and say, okay, what key nutrients are we not getting enough of? Let's make sure we start putting those in and give you a simple process. I use a very simple one-hand meal plan framework as a foundation. Now, people have to customize and adapt, beyond this once we know your unique body, but I'm happy to share that if you want me to share my one-hand meal plan approach.
Yeah,
Would
sounds
you like
like
me
a good
to?
idea. Absolutely.
Okay. The one-hand meal plan is PFFV. So what that stands for, P is for protein. If you think about a palm-sized serving of protein at the minimum with each meal, so 3 times a day, minimum palm-sized serving of protein. Then F is for fiber-rich foods. Think of a scoop. At a minimum, a scoop of fiber-rich foods. These are things like legumes, different beans, garbanzo beans, lentil beans, black beans, kidney beans, also whole grains or nuts and seeds. Those are good sources of fiber-rich foods. The second F is for healthy fat. Thinking of omega-3 rich healthy fats. So like a thumb-sized serving of omega-3 fatty acids. This could be a sprinkle of olive oil over your salad. It could be a couple slices of avocado that you have with your eggs in the morning, something like that, right? To give us that healthy fat to make really fluid, flexible cell membranes so that things can come into and out of each cell effectively. And then that V is for vegetable. You want a full fist at a minimum of vegetables each and every meal. So yes, even breakfast. PFFV. This is a baseline, right? Many people kind of adjust and tweak beyond if they have greater nutrient needs or whatnot. But at a minimum, if we get in the habit of thinking for breakfast, like, oh, okay, where's my PFFV? You make yourself a smoothie, you throw in some spinach, you add in a little bit of chia seed for the flax seed and the healthy omegas. You maybe put in some protein powder to get your protein. Get in the habit of PFFV every meal. That's going to start you off in a good, consistent place as a foundation. So that's step 2 is nutrients. Step 3, like I said, is the digestion. We have to make sure that our gut health is working. So looking at some simple ways that we look at gut health and we can test to make sure you have adequate digestion and can absorb those nutrients and really make sure that's working for you. Step 4 is the reset your thinking. That's again the brain science. This is by this point when we're looking at the nutrients and we're looking at the lifestyle factors, we've kind of exposed some of the things that you perhaps don't believe are possible for you. Maybe you don't believe I can actually have good nourishment consistently every day because you're like, I work too much, I don't have time. Maybe that's a belief that you have, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
believe that you can get out and move your body in a way that feels good and gives you energy. Okay, well, now we've started to expose some of those beliefs that are holding you back. So step four, we're going to do some of that rewiring in the brain science. Really look at those beliefs, question the validity of them, and help you shift them.
Mhm.
And then step five is removing toxins. In order to keep inflammation low, ongoing in the body, we want to make sure your total toxic threshold is able to be maintained. You're not getting in a situation where now we're creating more and more inflammation and blockage. So we look at the things in our environment that cause inflammation, cause toxic buildup, and start to bring those down. And that's how you create, like, once you get all of that knowledge about what nutrients are working for me, what thoughts and beliefs did I have that were holding me back, and I can change those. How can I manage my toxins and my inflammation? Now you've got a game plan that will keep you moving forward in a really positive way.
Sounds incredible. Also a little bit intense, but fine, I guess. Like we said, it's not in one day, right? It's
No, it's over many months, many months. Yeah.
but it's interesting. I mean, of course, for me, my biggest question is breakfast, right? What do I have for breakfast? It's a daily question and a daily struggle actually. And it's funny because I remember a time when I didn't have the question of every morning, what am I going to have? So it is interesting. I want to ask a question. I guess I have two questions. I guess we also coming towards the end of the program today. But first of all, I'm curious because you started your journey with an autoimmune diagnosis, but now you're really saying like mostly you work with people with thyroid problem. Well, why thyroid? I told you the fruit fly is going to come, right? Yeah. So why thyroid more than anything else that that you are or focusing on?
Thyroid, well, part of it is because that was my story. Right? I started with thyroid, and because it's so pervasive, especially with women. Thyroid dysfunction affects women in greater number than men. Part of it is because of our other hormones, like estrogen, can become a thyroid block. And there's over 25 million women that are affected by suboptimal thyroid function. And unfortunately, many of those women don't actually know that it's thyroid that's slowing down the metabolism. And if we think about thyroid is a metabolic hormone, right? It helps each cell in the body to generate energy. And two of the most important organs in your body that need to generate the most energy are your brain and your heart. So a lot of people don't realize and associate that down the road problems with heart and brain, even Alzheimer's, has now been linked to suboptimal thyroid function for decades before. Cardiovascular, metabolic health is often linked earlier to suboptimal thyroid function. So my mission is, because that's kind of my story. That was my entry point into this health journey. And it's so impactful across the board for so many different types of disease dynamics that affect us in life, that if I can do my part to help educate and help empower women to understand how to support their metabolism, how to boost their thyroid function, and perhaps avoid some of those downstream unwanted illnesses, like absolutely, I feel like that's my God's mission to
Mhm.
do.
So tell me, it sounds like maybe we have to touch that. What are some symptoms? How do people, when should they think maybe it's my thyroid and not just, like you said, the, what did you call it? The whatever, the why bother?
Why bother with syndrome? Yes, well, honestly, all of the symptoms that I've been talking about. So, difficult. I mean, the most common that people are familiar with is weight gain, right? When we have weight gain, when we have low energy and fatigue quickly, or low stamina, brain fog, when you feel like you just can't focus and function, and, you know, trouble regulating temperature control. So, feel cold often, or cold hands and fingers, or hair loss. These are some of the earliest signs of suboptimal thyroid function. Now, the things I'm saying often sound like menopause and perimenopause. So a lot of the symptoms kind of go hand in hand. And that's why sometimes it's missed that it is, in fact, linked to thyroid health. And our thyroid health works so closely with our adrenal health, with the health of our stress response system in the body. So usually that's why the work that I do is actually helping to support all of the body systems, not just thyroid.
Mhm.
But that's why kind of that's an area of interest for me because it's kind of a catchphrase. It's a hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. These are terms that they're fairly common in the conversation around women's health.
Mhm. And so I guess, can you give us an example of a success story? I think that's something that people always want to hear. I mean, of course,
For
other than
sure.
your own and your daughter's, which is wonderful, of course, to hear. What other story pops to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just think I was just yesterday talking to a client, Amy, that I work with, and she's just been, I mean, talk about completely transforming her life. I mean, she had been struggling with probably carrying an extra 30 pounds for over 2 decades. And when we started to partner together, she's like, I have to admit, Amanda, like I've had this weight for so long. I don't even know if it's possible for me to change. Like maybe this is just how my body is. Like I honestly, I may get kind of a place to acceptance of the size I'd like to lose weight, but what was the next catalyst that really inspired her to take it a step further and invest in her health and hire support and work together with me was she had been to a doctor appointment recently, found out she was severely anemic and pre-diabetic. And she's like, holy cow, now, I mean, I know I've known for a while it would be advantageous. And my doctor's been saying to like lose weight and to, start moving more and giving all the generic advice of like, look at what you're eating. Let's make sure you're moving more and you need to lose some weight. Okay, she had been trying it. She'd done Weight Watchers, she'd done 21-day fixes, she'd done all the things, right? It's not for lack of effort. It was just it wasn't sustainable. So these two now more physiological factors, the anemia and the prediabetes, not in addition to all the way she was feeling, like completely fatigued. She's like, I have such low energy. My hair is so thin, it's falling out. She's like, I just have a hard time even keeping up with work. And she was one of the main sources of financial income for her family. So she was like, this is not, it's not sustainable. Like her symptoms were affecting her life and quality of life, right? So when we started working together again, looking through these steps and really saying like, okay, we're going to come up with a plan, but we get to shift your identity. We get to do the work to unpeel the layers of just believing like, hey, I've always been the overweight kid and I've had this my whole life. It's just the way it is. And really redefine her relationship with her body, with her movement, and how she nourishes. She's like, I cannot tell you how different it was. For some reason, it landed differently when I saw my micronutrient test and you kept teaching and talking to me about how my cells need this vitamin A so they don't have the inflammation. My cells need this B6 so that they can convert iron and use it effectively so I'm not anemic. My cells need this. It's like she's like, once I kind of have that awareness, it's like, why would I choose to starve my body of what it needs? Like,
Mhm.
why wouldn't I partner with my body and start to work with it so it can feel better? So, I mean, it was a journey, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it's a journey of making the dots, making the connections, seeing the choices and the options, and then seeing the evidence of it. So, what was her results? She ended up losing over 50 pounds, no longer anemic. She's no longer pre diabetic. And she said the most rewarding thing is she last year was on a family vacation and hiked this big volcano in Hawaii. And this year went to Joshua Tree and was able to hike and camp out over Joshua Tree. She's like, Amanda, 2 years ago, those hikes wouldn't have even been a possibility for me because of the health. She's like, I could not have physically done those. And she's like, yes, it's nice to not have like the doctor mark me as pre-diabetic or whatever on the form. But she's like, what's so much more rewarding is what I'm living and what I get to do in my life now because of who I've become and the health that I have. So it literally changes and transforms you on such profound levels. It's hard to put into words until you actually choose it for yourself.
That is amazing. And so, with someone like that, after the 7 months that you're working together, you will have like a constant check-ins every so often to see that everything is still on track, and if there's any questions or anything like that to keep the journey going.
Okay. Well, keep it, because like I said, health is a journey. At that point, usually you have much more intimate connection and knowledge about your body. So it doesn't need to be as hands-on learning, right? It's more, like I said, I touch base with my clients once a quarter and we do a quick check-in of like where you're at from a symptom perspective, what's working well, what's the biggest challenge, to kind of keep you and kind of keep that ahead of the game so that you can be looking proactively to be empowered in your health instead of waiting until reactively it becomes too hard that you have to face it. No.
And so with the book that you published, is that, if someone if someone picks it up, will that, what difference will that help them achieve?
Oh, it's a huge starting point. I mean, I feel like this is just another way to get this. It's like anything, our reticular activating system, which is part of the brain, RAS, it tends to tune into the thing that you gave attention to most recently. So if you're in the process of reading a book like this, you're going to be going through the steps and thinking about it and reading about it and learning about it and thinking about the most common mindset shifts in each chapter for each step. I say these are the most common mindset shifts that women have had to become aware of. And so you'll see and you'll start to think about it in a new way. It cannot help but start to shift and shape your choices and your decisions, right? Obviously, this is not the same as working with me up close and personal and going through the journey, but this is a great entry point for somebody who's like, hey, I just want to learn more about how I can start to make these shifts, make these changes, or what I should be looking out for. This is a great place to start.
Mm. Amazing, amazing. Amanda, thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us today and for sharing your wisdom, your story, your inspiration. I hope that anyone listening will get in touch. I think you have definitely helped open our eyes and minds to a lot of the things that we probably didn't until now. So thank you for that. Thank you. And of course, all of your information will be shown at the show notes, so people can get in touch with you. Any last words before we say goodbye for today?
No, I think this has been a fun conversation, Einav. I hope all of your listeners have felt inspired and, really just are, if it resonates with them, they're ready to find out some more information, get curious, and maybe start with that hormone assessment to see what is your body trying to tell you through your symptoms.
That's a very good question. Thank you so much, Amanda.
My pleasure.